Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show, where I get to learn a little bit more about somebody's perspective on movies. But flipping the script this week, as this is another interview of the Wasteland Reviewer, and this time my wife, Jess, is going to be asking me questions about Metropolis. And this is the 1927 science fiction classic, directed by Fritz Lang, and it's a pretty iconic film, but I'm going to pass things off to Jess, who's going to guide the ship now.
Yes, so bouncing off of that, when you mentioned iconic, why did you choose this movie for your curriculum specifically?
So, the whole idea of my curriculum for these interviews on Lost in the Wasteland is the history of science fiction. And the first one was pretty simple, like Trip to the Moon was the one that made the most sense. It's like the original science fiction film that really made people believe all kinds of things could happen in movies. And I contemplated adding another Georges Méliès film into that, but I decided that I really felt like the next really pivotal science fiction film here was Metropolis, because we're going from like a movie that's like 10 minutes to this movie which is 2.5 hours, and it doesn't even have all the footage because stuff's been lost in time. So this is even longer. So it's one of those kinds of things where it's just like, this was such a revolutionary film in terms of scope and effects and all kinds of things. So I thought it was very fitting and culturally relevant. I feel like a lot of people, even if they've never watched this film, heard about this film, have seen the Machine Man, like this robot man character that they have in this film. And also all of our Queen fans out there, if you've ever watched the music video for Radio Gaga, it is just a giant ode to Metropolis. So it's out there in pop culture.
Very good. So I probably should have refined this question a little more. I literally just wrote, what's up with the costume, Shane?
Well, I think
my degree is in psychology and not journalism.
I feel like the costumes are so important in this film because deep down, the whole entire film is about the difference in terms of class between those who are in the working class, the proletariat, who are busting their asses all day, every day, all night to keep the machine going for the rich and powerful people. So when you look at it, most of the costumes are split into two kinds of things. It's either they're very plain, almost identical outfits that every single man and woman in this proletariat group are wearing.
I think they just have a number on them, right?
And it's that kind of thing where it's just like, they're just another cog in the machine. And you see that from like that opening of them going like, walking all tired out of work, and them all walking in sync as part of this giant machine into it. And so you have those costumes, which are very bare, very plain. You see those kinds of things in like Hunger Games and like District 13, where it's
dark too.
Yeah, and they're like this darkish gray, or well, they look like it. It's black and white.
Well,
so
12 Angry Men comes to mind. Most of them are in gray or black, except for Henry Fonda. He's in sparkling white.
Well, that's it. Didn't really think about that, but that's also in black and white. So can't necessarily tell exactly what colors they're wearing, but I think it's along that point. And then some of the outfits that some of the bourgeoisie wear in this film, like our main character and his giant poofy pants, are absurd.
It's called fashion shame.
Gustav Froelich, who plays Frieder Friederson.
I can't with the name.
Who has these big poofy like safari pants and he's all in white, and he's in this, like, oasis type place where people are wearing these really ornate, obnoxious, over-the-top kinds of costumes that they totally culturally appropriated from, like, Africa and South America and stuff like that, which also makes a lot of sense in what it's trying to reinforce about rich people and high class people. And then a lot of like his father, is Johann or Jan Friedersen, is in like this very nice suit the whole entire movie. You have who I like to call Lurch, the creepy henchman guy who's in this giant black suit.
Yep.
Except then there's one character who sticks out, and that's Rotvang, who's the mad scientist who looks dressed like a mad scientist and has hair like all over the place and looks like he's dressed like a mad scientist. So I think the costuming is so important because it lines up so importantly visually with the themes and the ideas that they're trying to convey in the film and really make it very clear. And you even see when Maria Brigitte Helm's character gets replaced by the Machine Man in it, she has this like very skimpy outfit on because she's supposed to be seductive. And like, which is interesting because earlier in the film Maria's in a very conservative, chaste, like high collar, long sleeve.
It's supposed to be like the Virgin Mary, right, or whatever. I thought there was a religious element there.
It really gives that, and like of Frieder just being like at her, and she's just standing there like trying not to be seductive, but definitely like that's what they're trying to get at, is that she's so alluring that he can't help but be like staring at her.
There's not a lot to look at up there in paradise.
But the thing is, it's like you have like for ease of conversation, we're just gonna say Machine Maria. Machine Maria's in this very scantily clad, like cocktail dress and stuff like that, where like you totally see cleavage, we're seeing some ankles and legs and stuff like that, and then of course all the men there in these tuxedos, which is such a great juxtaposition of the faces
they all
that
get to go to horny jail.
All of them. Bonk. They're getting executed tomorrow. They're a very, very extreme case of need to go to horny jail right away. So I think that's the main thing about the costumes for the film and how they reinforce characterization and the themes of the film.
What did you think of the backgrounds and the effects, the framing, the general cinematography of it?
So to give proper citation to the 3 cinematographers that worked on this film, Karl Freund, Gunther Rito, and Walter Ruttmann. Save the most straightforward one for last. And there's like 9 composers on this movie because the tricky thing is it's like this isn't really the original music. So over the years, composers have been credited with adding new music to the film. It's a silent film. Yeah, exactly. So like they had the music that was originally written for the orchestra to play in the theater, to play during the movie, because that's how movies used to be. You had a whole orchestra playing your score along with the movie.
It's classy.
Yeah, right? It's probably why pianos were so common back then, because it's just like throw a piano in the corner. It's like do 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 do, just like noodling on the keys over there.
We have a piano.
But the actual cinematography is so impressive because everything is so meticulously framed and set up, and there's such an interesting variety of shots in this film. There's a lot of extreme close-ups. Like, it wouldn't be as effective of this film trying to convey that Maria is like drop dead gorgeous if you didn't have this framing of her like this, looking like so perfect in this frame, or even the shot that I alluded to earlier where she's doing like her crazy seductive dance, and it's this uncomfortably close up of these men and their all their weird faces. It's right there in your face.
It inspired Duran Duran to write Hungry Like the Wolf.
All of them were hungry like the wolf. Those elements are so important from that. And then all the effects are so important too. There's a lot of symmetry in this film. Like there's this amazing shot early in the film when Frater sees the factory for the first time. And it's this temple kind of shape, this pyramid type shape. And there's this amazing fade effect of it turning into this giant monster with steam coming out of its mouth as it's devouring people. And the workers are like tiredly walking up the stairs into its mouth. And if you didn't have such a great framing of that's so poignant and hit that so well, it wouldn't be as effective. And you could definitely tell the films of Georges Méliès, he kind of set a tone for being able to use fades and edits to make movie magic happen. And you can, that scene works so well because it does that. It's that slow fade in of this monster replacing what this actual thing is. And you have the symmetry of all the workers on these, clock-like machines where they're moving the arms. And the amazing, there's matte paintings with these incredible backgrounds and all the models that they use to create the cities, which is jaw-dropping. And you have, little model cars going and planes and stuff like that.
Looks good.
Because you need to be able to create this world and make it feel lived in for us to really buy into it. And then at the end, when the proletariat city is just flooded, all of these buildings and everything just getting straight wrecked with the water, and those models are so important. And Fritz Lang obviously had an amazing eye for being able to create this world and frame it and be able to bring the audience in and feel like they're in this strange futuristic place that yet still has a lot of the same exact problems we have today in terms of that disconnect between people. So it's very interesting when you look at the cinematography of it and how they frame everything, and just how so many of these shots are iconic that it's I can see it in my head. The amazing reveal of the machine man in this electrical some kind of contraption that slowly is taking Maria's image and then slowly fading it over this machine, which is very obviously a man in a suit.
I feel like it's good enough you can suspend your disbelief.
Well, that's the thing, because it feels real. Mm-hmm. And because it is an actual walking being, and it's C-3PO. If you look at it, George Lucas definitely watched Metropolis, because 3PO is 100% just based off of this golden idol type machine. And of course, Anthony Daniels is 3PO in the suit and everything. It has that same kind of feel to it. So this film's revolutionary in terms of how it shot the film, and then also how it utilized all of its effects to make this world come to life. That German expressionism.
I had a question about that. I deleted it because I think I couldn't make it sound smart. Let's say that you were going to do the controversial thing of remaking this. How would you cast it? Who would you cast?
Just asked this question because during the movie I'm it's Christopher Walken! Rotwang.
I love to pick the low-hanging fruit.
The crazy scientist who has a problem with Joe. Rotwang is 100% Christopher Walken. I could just see it. And if I couldn't get Christopher Walken, because he's pretty old at this point. Here's the thing. If this was 90s, perfect. Get Christopher Walken right now.
Sweet spot.
I want him to look like Max Schreck from... And you know what's so interesting is, not to go off on too much of a tangent, is there's so much of this movie in Batman Returns. you can 100% tell. Well, Tim Burton's such a big fan of German Expressionism to begin with, and there's so much in the Batman films that Tim Burton made from Metropolis. Like, the whole entire confrontation with the Joker at the top of that building in the first one feels right out of the confrontation between Rotfang and Maria and Frater in this film. But, which is funny because if I couldn't... So, like, if it was today and Christopher Walken's, like, 80-something at this point, Michael Keaton has the right level of, like, crazy, let's get nuts, being that, because, you know, he's Beetlejuice, and I feel like he kind of has that, Michael Keaton definitely has that crazed undercurrent of, like, there's something that he could just pull on here, so that would be interesting. I feel like the low-hanging fruit would just be like, well, we're just gonna get Timothée Chalamet to play Frieder, because, like,
I mean, if the shoe fits.
Because I'm trying to think of, like...
Why make your life harder?
Because, like, I don't see Frater as somebody... Like, he's not going to be, like, someone... And I'm thinking somebody in their 20s. I don't want to, like, cast, like... Go for people like Ryan Gosling or...
They're supposed to be young and idealistic.
Yeah. So, like, I think Timothée Chalamet would bring that right kind of energy. But, like, if you're trying to get somebody who might be a little bit bigger in stature, because, like, Frieder has this vibe that, like, he looks like he can handle himself, but he definitely can't. Because, like, he's that kind of character that he's so pampered and spoiled. Mm-hmm. But, like, I think Timothée Chalamet would be an easy one. I think, like, the easiest thing would be to get, like, a Margot Robbie type for Maria. Yeah. Even if you literally got, like, Samara Weaving or Emma Mackey, who are literally Margot Robbie types, to play that role. And they're a little younger than Margot Robbie because, like, I feel like she would be... I imagine the two of them being roughly the same age, so, like, I would probably even get, like, Samara Weaving or Emma Mackey to be with Timothée Chalamet in this film. For his father... I feel like it'd be a very interesting pick to get, like, George Clooney at this point to be, like, this distinguished-looking businessman to be that character. And, like, this is gonna sound silly. There's the main, like, working-class guy who's big and burly and has a beard, Jack Black, 100%. I feel like he had... Because here's the thing. So many of these actors, you used to have to overact in silent films. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of... it's very interesting because there's so much great close-ups in this film that maybe you didn't need to overact that much. It's like, we can tell. But, like, I feel like Jack Black would definitely bring that energy that this character has. And who... Like... I would have to get, like, Michael Shannon to play the, like, evil henchman guy. Because, like, he's just scary. Like, if you tell Michael Shannon to be scary, he's going to be scary. I just feel like that plays off perfectly. And then I would still want the Robot Man to be some kind of actor in a suit. Doug Jones. Get Doug Jones down here.
I was thinking him.
Throw that outfit on him.
Doug Jones.
Good for you, Doug Jones. So, that's kind of...
This is a Doug Jones positive house.
Feel like those are, like, the main characters. You know what? I feel like I would have to try to find something for Willem Dafoe in this movie, because he just feels like he would be in a movie like this. Like, 100%. Maybe, so, like, I'll throw in one other option for Rotfang. Willem Dafoe. Because I feel... He just has that energy. If I need somebody to be play big, menacing, Michael Keaton, Willem Dafoe. Got it.
Willem Dafoe was good as the guy in The Northman?
Oh, yeah, he's like one of the...
Jester or whatever.
Yeah,
Jester type.
Of, like, their clan. I feel like you gotta bring that Norman Osborn energy. Or, like, especially even, like, The Lighthouse.
I'm a scientist myself.
There you go.
That's why
Perfect.
Shane keeps me around. Just comedy. Yep. Comedy relief.
That was perfect. But yeah, so I feel like that would be like my base cast. I feel like I'm going to kick myself that I would definitely think of somebody better that's not just Timothée Chalamet for the main character. Because, like, to be perfectly frank, how hard is it to think of anybody for, like, a 20-something-year-old lead that's not Tom Holland and Timothée Chalamet right now? Because I feel like that's just them. Like, I'm trying to think, there's probably some other young actors and stuff like that that would work, but, like, it's hard not to just pick Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know.
You know what, 100%, if Robert Pattinson was younger, definitely. So, like, if this was, like, 10 years ago, Robert Pattinson 100% would be my Frater Fraterson. But yeah, so those are my answers.
Delightful. Alright, last question I have. Why is this film still beloved, Shane?
I feel like it works on a couple levels on why this is something that people still go to and why this is still considered one of the most important pillars in early science fiction is, one, this revolutionized filmmaking and special effects. It's easy to just hone in and focus on American filmmaking, which then also most people just shove British filmmaking under there too, because, like, they're English. It's all the same thing. But the thing is, it's like, early cinema was made up of important pillars from all around the world. Like, one out of the first two most important and significant filmmakers were French. And then you had Edwin S. Porter, who's working for Thomas Edison, which is, like, as American as you can get. But it's important to realize that, like, so much of early cinema in the 1920s was German. And Hitler ruined it. And
World War I, too, I imagine. Didn't do any favors.
Well, that's the thing. In the 1920s, Fritz Lang came to prominence. F.W. Murnau with, like, Nosferatu.
True.
So, like, those kinds of films were all German. German Expressionism was at its height at that time, but a lot of them were Jewish. Fritz Lang escaped Germany and came to America. He made some good films in America, but, like, nothing on the same level as Metropolis or M, which are so significant. So, like, I feel like this is such an important and significant piece in the development of filmmaking. But also, you know, some of these characters are so archetypes at this point. Like, Frieder is a vanilla as they come lead character that has, like, no depth at all. It's actually some of the most interesting stuff is his father and Rotvang, who have a whole entire history together. But it's the themes. At the core of it, there's still class struggles. There's still such a humongous divide between working class people and billionaires who don't have to do shit, don't have to pay shit, and just accumulating wealth because they don't pay taxes.
And drowning the lower class.
So, literally, in this movie, they drown the lower classes. So, I feel like those themes are too uncomfortably relatable and still significant for this film to not make an impact.
True.
Because it is, the whole entire core of the film is that what connects the brain and the hands is the heart. And on some level, something or somebody needs to bridge that gap.
Alright, Freud. It's the ego, the super ego, isn't it?
I have a master's in accounting, miss. I have a psych degree. So something needs to bridge that gap in between these wealthy, elitist types in society and the working class people that bust their ass day to day to make this whole entire giant machine work. And that's still as relevant in 2023 as it was in 1927, which is really sad. So, chew on that one. And that's why Metropolis is still such a classic today.
Lovely.
any other interesting thoughts or things that popped into your head watching the movie?
Just the Freud one. That was it. That's all I have to offer.
Freud was so popular back then.
He was.
That's all Dr. Jekyll.
He was still recently deceased too. I think he died not too far. Those mountains of cocaine. But he was still,
interesting.
And archetypes are a Jungian thing.
Interesting.
I think it was also German.
Well, yeah. Interesting side recommendation then, since you mentioned both of them. Cronenberg's A Dangerous Method has both. It's about Freud and Jung, and it's Viggo Mortensen as Sigmund Freud, and Michael Fassbender is Carl Jung. So, interesting recommendation. But this one, I feel like I have to give a specific recommendation. If you can get your hands on the Kino Lorber remastered edition of this film, which has the most scenes added back into it, because you are, as of right now, you can't find a complete version of this film. I hope for a miracle that somebody has an intact print somewhere.
Maybe in like an estate sale or something.
Something. But there's still scenes that you'll never get to see, and they just have, like boards. And like I've watched some other films like that. That's the tricky thing. Back then, they made movies on extremely flammable
cellulose,
and
right?
just like not built to last. No. So some films are going to be incomplete like this, and this one certainly is. But the 2.5 hours that you do get, so worth it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those are all my fun thoughts on Metropolis, which is one of my favorite science fiction films of all time. And every time I come back on here, I'll be continuing my journey through the history of science fiction. Definitely be getting into some of those science fiction heavy universal horror films from the 1930s, because, Frankenstein.
They're fun.
And Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, The Invisible Man, all science fiction. No Dracula. That's not science fiction.
Fantasy.
That is straight up fantasy. But Jess, thank you so much for being the moderator on this particular episode of Lost in the Wasteland.
It's an honor and a privilege.
And she came up with all those questions for the most part, and I didn't know them beforehand. So you came up with some good, thought-provoking questions. So
thank you. I tried.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.